It got ugly, but Philly took care of business against Houston and secured their 19th dub. Let's start with what makes their offense so dangerous and how they can be even more deadly. You know who I am, bro. Let's talk about it. Each Sixer moves into place on the opening possession, which leads to the money look. This look differentiates the 2020 Sixers from any Sixer squad in the Simmons and Embiid era. There's 3 train-to-splash shooters around the perimeter, which naturally pulls the defense further out of the paint. And that leaves way too much room for the Undertaker to give the Rockets hell. He's 7'2". That's just not fair. The Sixers are naturally spreading defenses out, and it's producing favorable one-on-one matchups. There's 4 Sixers with the threat of a jump shot around the perimeter, and one of them is their center. That shooting gravity pulls Houston's rim protector 12 feet away from the basket and weakens their entire interior defense. Jayshawn Tate, you're all alone. Help's not coming for you! See, the Sixers' production isn't happening by accident. Philly's shooting gravity consistently debilitates defenses, and it allows their playmakers to see the entire floor. That's happening naturally, too. The Sixers don't have to force it. Philly generates a switch. It's a mismatch. Money look. There's 4 Sixers around the perimeter with the threat of a jump shot, and 2 of them are a couple of feet beyond it. Then Tobias at 6'8" can attack the naturally produced mismatch. The thing about this look is that if the Sixers establish it early, it's theirs for all 4 quarters. Just look at what the shooting gravity does. It clears congestion in the paint. The floor is so spaced that Macias can let Joe know Houston isn't biting. They're sending a double. Take heed! But it's no problem for the Undertaker. Watch how Philly moves as one. They know Tobias wants to attack this mismatch, so they pull doubles away and get to their spots to make that happen. Now Tobias has eyes on the only help defender, so he could just go to work comfortably. David Nwaba, you don't have that kind of muscle. Listen, any playmaker on the Sixers benefits from this spacing. It's crazy that the Sixers 7'2" center can space the floor enough to pull Houston's rim protector all the way out to the free throw line. Look at Tyrese Maxey, size him up, attack, 0 to 100 speed. Joe took his headband off after halftime, and that's when it got ugly. First, watch how Macias pulls the double away, and the Sixers shooting gravity naturally takes care of the rest. Which means, Boogie Dog, I love you, but tonight, you go one-on-one with the Undertaker. As usual, Philly's shooting gravity around the arc keeps Houston's defense honest. Boogie forces Joe to his left, but the Undertaker gets the step. Look at Joe protecting the rock like it's his child. Like, look at the space that Joe sees all the way out from the wing. Houston can't even afford to throw bodies into the paint because of the threat of Philly's 3-ball. And just to be sure of it, Seth Curry makes the defense react. Go to work, Joe. The spin, the fade. Oh my God, this dude's making 60% of his fadeaway J's at 7'2". What? This exemplifies the significance of role definition and knowing where shots are coming from. Joe knows he'll have a teammate in the dunker, so he can react to this defender and keep the rock high. Tobias made a very similar read. He knows where Danny's supposed to be, so he can react to the defensive pressure and spins out of a potential double team or turnover. And I'll let you finish the rest with me. That's a what? A grown man bucket! Macias pulls the closest potential double team away from Joe, and each Sixer moves into their place as one. But Thibault lets Joe know, be cautious. But meanwhile, the Sixers formed the money look. It may be too late for Houston. I thought so. Game on the line, 4th quarter, minutes play, and the Sixers generate the money look. It's a cheat code. There's shooting gravity all around the perimeter that Houston has to respect, which leaves Boogie on an island. And you know what that means. Now, 3-point shooting is pivotal for Philadelphia. The Sixers are always going to be able to space the floor, but capitalizing on their 3-point opportunities changes the game. Philly trails the Clippers, Milwaukee, Utah, Brooklyn in 3-point percentage on these shots. Open threes. If the Sixers can raise their percentage there by 3, 4, 5%, they're an even more dangerous squad. They just overmatch teams, so opponents have no choice but to double. When defenses double, they gotta scramble to get out on shooters, and the Sixers gotta make them pay for that. Once again, the volume is not the problem, but if the Sixers are gonna rock with bully ball, they gotta capitalize on their 3-point tries. After all, the Sixers are an undefeated 10-0 when they've made 6 or more threes in the first half. The better the shooting, the easier it is for Ben, Joe, and Tobias to torture defenses. Philly showcased some new additions in their playbook. And listen, this is a team that's top 10 in driving points, top 10 in pick and roll points, and top 10 in handoff points. Let's see what makes their offense work. Philly isn't staying one-dimensional. They keep adding new wrinkles. If you've hung out with me in a breakdown, you might think you know what's coming. Look, even Houston thinks they know what's coming too. But instead of the screen and a handoff for Macias, Joe initiates the two-man game with Seth. This frees Curry in space so he can get downhill for an uncontested bucket. Now instead of Curry cutting and Macias getting the handoff, Macias cuts and Seth gets the two-man game action. And this is complementary to Curry's game as he's converting over 50% of his shots as a pick and roll ball handler. Here, Danny Green releases to the basket and Joe again initiates that two-man game with Seth Curry. And he's going to be a massive part of what Philly does offensively as he gets his strength and stamina back. Here's a new one for the Sixers. There's two high ball screens for the ball handler on the left and right. Then the Sixers produce endless options. A game of fives is now a game of threes. Maxey can drive, or he could shoot. He can dump it off to Joe, who's rolling, or he could give it to Korkmaz, who's chilling beyond the arc. Outside of Philly's playbook, a lot of their offensive production came from the two-man game, which is right on par with what they've done all season. This offense is already way more productive than anyone the Sixers featured in the past 6 seasons. The two-man game is just another way to attack mismatches and produce number advantages. I mean, just think about the numbers. The Sixers are top 10 in driving points and have scored over 150 more points on drives through 29 games this season than they did last year. They're also top 10 league-wide for total points scored via handoffs. Lastly, Philly has the 10th most pick-and-roll ball handler points in the league this season compared to bottom 3 in each season since 2015. Their ball handlers can just manipulate coverage. It goes like this, right? Seth Curry clears the Embiid screen, and now David Nwaba is in his back pocket. So then Boogie's got to decide between two players that are moving north and south. The Sixers' second unit outscored Houston's shorthanded second unit, but nonetheless, there's still a lack of creation and offensive production with the Sixers' reinforcements. That's nothing they won't try to address though. Without Shake Milton, the offensive creation in the second unit is just non-existent. Now Houston was shorthanded, so the Sixers' second unit outscored theirs 21-10. If Philly's gonna look to make a trade by the deadline or monitor the buyout market, which they definitely are, they're gonna look to add some depth to this bench. That's what will separate them from being a good team or a great team. The Sixers' ball security, or lack thereof, in the second half made this game a lot closer than it had to be, but there were only 2 lead changes in the entire game. So I'm not that pressed. This was one of Philly's worst games in terms of turnovers. They protected the ball in the first half, but they gave it up over 13 times in the second. Houston generated a season-high 36 points off of Philly turnovers. There were only 2 lead changes in the entire game, so Philly decided the outcome. But on a different night, or maybe if Houston was healthier, these turnovers could have been really detrimental. Let's spend some time on defense for a change, because there was a lockdown 2-3 zone in the first half, a couple of recurring problems that flared for Philadelphia again, and a menacing defensive performance from Matisse Thybulle. Houston shooting just over 30% from 3 in their past 10 games, so Philly went with the 2-3 zone early. And in the first half, it gave Houston fits. Houston made a season-low 16 shots from the floor in the first half and turned the ball over 13 times, a season high in the opening half. Matisse is 6'5", 6'6", with an almost 7-foot wingspan. He's able to gamble way more in a 2-3 zone because there's help everywhere. And that's why he becomes one of the most dangerous defenders in the NBA when Philly plays this zone. The reason why this zone worked so well against Houston is because it mostly eliminated inside dribble penetration and put pressure on them to make decisions and take contested threes, and put the Sixers' size into perspective. There's 3 or 4 guys on the floor that are 6'5" and taller. And in a zone, you're not defending a specific player, you're defending an area. Just look at how the 2-3 zone eliminates inside dribble penetration. There's a triangle of Sixers on this side of the floor in the zone, so contesting the shot becomes much easier. Once again, because Philly's playing 2-3 and can stick someone that's 6'6", 6'7" at the top of the zone, Houston can't operate from the high post. And like I said, in a zone, players are defending a specific area, so help really can come from anywhere. Houston inevitably shot their way out of the zone. In both the third and the fourth quarter, Houston made as many threes as they did in the entire first half combined. That's how you bust a zone. Move the ball and hit your three. Houston did that and got hot from three late. Another reason why Houston made this way more of a game than it should have been was dribble penetration in the second half. John Wall had 2 points and 5 turnovers in the first half. But in the second half, he kept getting downhill and scored 26 points in the final 2 quarters. He found a soft spot in Philly's defense and kept his foot on the gas. This isn't the first time that an opposing guard exploited Philly's defense with dribble penetration. Devin Booker and Chris Paul did it just a few games ago. Let's talk about pick and roll coverage too. Philly's been doubling the ball handler a few times in the past 5 games, which I think is effective. This stops the dribble, and then you'd rely on your help defense to tag the roller. Philly switched on screens a few times, which is fine because they have one of the most switchable defenses in the league. And this was another good way to stop the dribble and take away a shot. To no surprise though, Philly was comfortable with drop coverage. That's probably to be expected against a team like Houston because John Wall would just beat Joel Embiid or Dwight Howard off the edge if they hedged every time. And the concept is the same. John Wall navigates around the screen and puts the on-ball defender in his back pocket so he could go to work. Or he can manipulate and read the defense to take advantage of it the same way Philly does. Regardless, I won't let that dim Matisse Thybulle's defensive performance. He finished with 4 steals, 8 deflections, and a block. Thybulle is one of only 4 players with at least 40 steals and 20 blocks, but he played a minimum of 260 less minutes than the other 3. He's 9th in the NBA for total deflections and has more steals and blocks combined than surrendered buckets. Matisse is a huge defensive asset and a future All-NBA defender. That's all I got, fam. I appreciate you hanging out with me. I hope to see you in the next breakdown, but if not, lob me a sub, comment below, like, tell a friend, holler at me on Twitter, do whatever you gotta do. But most importantly, stay solid, baby. Stay solid, baby. Yes, sir. 1K.